What's up? We live? Anybody listening? Anybody there? Anybody there? Flip says he's running a little late. Jared's running a little behind. I hope I'm showing live on the YouTube. While we were waiting for them, I thought I'd show you real quick a Mexico City song that I learned on my mission. Hey yo. Ya cholo chango chilango, que chapa champa de chutas, no che cantar de cuche, y chale con charola, tan choncho como una chinche, más chueco que la bayuca, con fusco y cachipora, te paso a andar de guarura. Mejor me echo una chela y chance enchufo una chapa, chambeando de chapirete, me sobra chupe pachanga. Yeah, chilango, banda. Si saco choco chipote, la chota no es muy molacha. Chillando a los que machuca, se va a morder su talacha. De noche cago con gal. No manches, dice la changa. What's that? Haha, one of my bestest companions from Death. Yeah. No manches, dice la changa. Chorro de teperocho, quien chifla pasa la pacha. Pachuco, cholos y chulos, chichiflas y malapachas. Acá los chompe la rifa y bailan tiberita. Where's it go? There it is. Pachucos, cholos y chulos, chiflas y malapachas. Acá los chompe la rifa y bailan tiberita. Bailan tiberita y bailan tiberita. Smell like yeah.
Is this something you wrote on your mission?
No, this is actually like Mexico City song. It's about like the Mexico City slang. So, mi nuero mata la vacha y canta la cucaracha. Su chollo vive de chochos, de chimo, churro y garnacha. Yeah, it's La Chilanga Banda.
I had a song that I wrote on my mission because at first my mission president didn't let me have a guitar, and I was annoyed with him. So I bought a ukulele and I tuned it like the bottom 4 strings of a guitar.
Oh yeah,
and just played it like that. And I made my companion's like, well, you spend all that time on the ukulele. Let's write some songs about the gospel or whatever. We could teach people with songs, and so I wrote a song about Sodom and Gomorrah and called it Butt Sex City.
But did you sing it in Portuguese or?
The verses
Portuguese. How does your
Portuguese? The verses were in Portuguese, but the chorus was just like, I don't remember. It was like Butt Sex City every day.
This one, it's like straight Mexico City slang, but it's like mejor me echo una chela. It's like I better go get a beer. Y chance enchufo una chava, and perhaps I'll have sex with a girl. Mejor me echo una chela y chance enchufo una chava, chambeando a los que al chapirete me sobra chupe pachanga. Just working as like a night taxi driver, I have enough alcohol to get super duper high. I mean, and then it talks about doing drugs and all this sorts of stuff, but nobody ever understands it because says my zone leader told me not to drink Coke, and so I popped 1.5 liter Coke in front of him in the entire zone, and I chugged it. Yeah, that's that song's called La Chilanga Banda. I think I've told the story before, but I had a dude on my mission who was I talked to him on this channel, but he was a very rebellious dude. And one day he didn't show up to the zone meeting, and then he came through halfway to the zone meeting. He was really upset with the zone leaders. Then he came in with a guitar singing, "No zone leader, no cry." And on my mission, like the meetings were like, that was like half the mission was there, and all these people, and he came in singing that because he was pissed off at them for delaying his reimbursements. But
badass.
Yeah, it was sweet.
I was just kind of a dick to my I had some zone leaders that were assholes, and I just told them I wouldn't do the things that they said they told me that God told us that we were supposed to. Everyone in our zone is supposed to invite people to be baptized on the first visit every time, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that. He's like, but it's revelation. I was like, no, I don't think that it is. That's a stupid thing you told me to do.
Yeah, Christopher picked up on my joke. Murray present from Flight of the Conchords. But the reason I put that on there is because I was going to talk a little bit about Murray, because the Midnight Mormons brought up a bunch of Murray drama, which I, strangely enough, have crazy amounts of ties to and didn't even realize it. We've joked several times that I'm the Forrest Gump of like D-list Mormonism. I've been around and come across so many different people. So the Midnight Mormons had a stream this week of April Wild Despain and some drama she had with another person, the PTA president of Murray, Jennifer Sewell Alwerda. Well, April Wild Despain, I grew up with her two older brothers, and she just, like, if you jumped her back fence, you were in my street. And then Jennifer Sewell Alwerda was in my ward growing up and was in my Sunday school class all growing up. And they all know, like, Lindsay Hansen Park and stuff too. So Murray's actually pretty big. Like Kevan Dolbert, there's probably like 100 different, more than 100 wards. There's several stakes, but all of them seemed at one point or another to funnel through my ward at one point or sometime. But Richie T. Stedman, he was on Radio from Hell. Mormon, he runs the Cultural Hall. His dad was my dad's first counselor when my dad was a bishop. And Lance Allred, who was on Mormon Stories, he was the deaf basketball player who got Rick Majerus fired. And then he went on Mormon Stories to give his description because he grew up kind of polygamous-y. He grew up down the street.
I matched up with Jim Bennett on Grindr the other day. I know famous people.
That's funny. Yeah, that's part of the whole deal, because I'm gonna have some Twitter threads of Jim Bennett freaking out on that April Despain person. I don't know if everybody saw the story. It got national news, but to me, it's like a little bit of a non-story in the sense of the one girl who was in my Sunday school class, Jennifer Sewell. She sent this April Despain put up the family proclamation as a flag in her front yard, and then the other one sent to her, the PTA president of Murray now, sent to her 7 or 8 different flags to go stick into her yard without her permission. LGBT pro flags or whatever. But it got national news. Let's see if I'll pull it up.
Yeah, it seems more like a mean prank than anything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But some people say, "Oh, it's discrimination or something with PTA president or who knows what." But,
it's very unprofessional. It's obviously
So that's
like,
her. And this is the proclamation flag that was put up. And then
so she's Desnat.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Is Jim Bennett got on about her, and I was talking to her, and I said, "Hey, did Jim Bennett freaked out on you?" She goes, "I don't even know who Jim Bennett is." And, there was a bunch of different posts.
Who the fuck are you?
Oh, this person is beyond the pale. Desnat adjacent, Desnatty. This is all.
Oh yeah, hateful for sure.
What I noticed about this, because this isn't the person that I know, this was just the person who's bringing it, and the person who was bringing the flags was really, really nice.
I know. She's like, "Oh, we didn't know.
We didn't know. We thought we were bringing something that was asked for, But, yeah, it made national news. Let's see. Did that show up? Did it click to the new link here, or I can't see the screen? Or is it still on Twitter?
It's on Twitter.
Okay. Here we go. There it is. PTA president sent these over to the lawn and made big old news, and that's my school, and both those two gals were in my wardish area growing up, and I'm kind of surprised around each other. Actually, when I talked to April, she didn't even know that Jennifer grew up so close to her, but that's not Jennifer. But yeah, so Murray in the news, so much Murray. Which Murray is also where David Archuleta is from. My mom actually taught David Archuleta. And so much news, so much Murray. And when they brought it up on the Midnight Mormons, they didn't even know where Murray was. But we're just the dumb suburb of Salt Lake City.
It's just Salt Lake City. That's all it is to me. That whole if I feel like if there's no, I'm in Idaho, so I feel like if there's no like wilderness or desert between your civilizations, you're now the same city. That's the rule.
Yeah, but it blew my mind because I didn't even put two together that I knew her two older brothers. I actually had like my very first girlfriend. I had a rivalry with them about them, and that's they moved out just like a little bit after that. But I guess they just moved to another part of Murray. But it blew my mind. It's like you were just like jumping the fence to my house, and actually just 2 houses over from her was John McEwen of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And he lived there like my whole life. I'm like, what the heck? It was just a weird area. And I also grew up, and this guy's actually one of my closer friends and still is with Britton Johnson. Kevan and I are still friends with him. And he was the guy who went to the NBA Final Four and got accused of saying the N-word at the Final Four. And it was a complete lie. It was one of the OG original hoaxes. And I was close friends to somebody who became part of a national hoax scandal 20-something years ago. Flip is here. Never fear, Flip is here. So we're just going over some of the Murray people that I knew. But
all the Murray people.
So did anybody Trump's indicted? Yay!
Yeah.
Which
I'm sure they're gonna be very consistent about it and also indict other former public officials who've been found with classified documents in their possession.
Totally.
Which who's doing the indicting? Is it Southern District of New York again or somebody else?
Probably. I mean, that's usually where it comes out of, but I think might just be the DOJ itself, but they haven't given an official reason yet. But
yeah, they need a reason. I thought they could just do it, right? Like,
you can indict a ham sandwich.
Oh man. So, what was your guys' favorite stuff this week? Well, let's review how we felt it went with the Kwaku. What do you guys think of talking with Kwaku?
It was fun.
Was good. We went until 1 a.m.
It was weird seeing him out of character, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't even think he'd do that. I thought he'd come in and kind of in character.
I know.
I was kind of ready to talk to him about the meta irony stuff to try to peel into his meta irony, but he wasn't doing the meta irony.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be some pushback, but I mean, I guess there was a tiny bit, but like for the most part, he was pretty cordial and just told us, and he felt like he was straight up.
Yeah, I think he was, but I mean, there's some of that. It was like, yeah, I put Mormonism first. I believe just in the straight up Mormonism, but then if you keep on talking, it all just kind of comes out that, yeah, I still totally believe in the esoteric wild stuff too.
Yeah.
Which I think it's cool. I think it's funny. I think it's fine, that people get into that stuff. I wonder like how I mean, I guess I asked all those questions last week. I thought it was funny how he said, well, they're not going to come after me because I'm a black guy, but I wonder if, how there's a bit of a fight going on Facebook right now of the Latter-day Lobsters versus the Hansonites.
Yeah.
And it's become like a bit of a meme. I think Hanson got kicked out of the Lobsters years ago for calling out the main guy. What's up, Maple Lake Mountain? He got kicked out because that main guy is totally Gnostic or whatever. And Hanson was probably chewing him out for it.
Well, Morgan Aldis, the admin, he says there was someone who had claimed to have been sexually assaulted, and Jacob expressed doubt. And that's what it was. Like doubt in his his very abrasive Jacob Hansen way. I think I only vaguely remember this, and the problem is I haven't heard Jacob's side of it. I've only ever heard the other side, and I thought it was really weird because they never kick anyone out.
He went through it on Marty's channel a little bit, but I don't remember what it was. But when Marty interviewed Jacob, he told the backstory a little bit, at least from his point of view. I can't recall, but listen to Jacob on Marty's channel, and Mormon discussions under the umbrella of Bill Real.
Yeah, I don't know. I've asked those weird Gnostic guys on there a lot of things. I've done a lot of pushback on their weird voodoo shit that they like, and it doesn't seem to bother them. Or I think they kind of act like it's cool and whatever. They act like they don't really care. But
Yeah,
I had a 2-comment interaction with Jim Bennett and got blocked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll pull up the thing that it went on.
But it's also perfect because like his whole thing is he came on and said, "Oh, I think Jordan Peterson is kind of a weenie," and I said, "Well, I think you're kind of a weenie."
Yeah, you got blocked just that quick. Oh, and to go off of what I was saying
you just
earlier,
use the language that I use to describe someone else to describe me? Blocked.
And to go off of what I was saying earlier, Jim Bennett, when he found out about that April Despain person putting up the family proclamation, there's not adjacent, started going into saying that Gays Against Groomer was a hate group. He did the research, and Gays Against Groomers is definitely a hate group.
Yeah, I know he did the research.
He did the research with Guadamax.
Yeah.
But he's gonna call Gays Against Groomers homophobic next.
Yeah. Here's the so this is Jim Bennett, who once again, just today he was on Mormonism with the Murph. They were talking about the 60 Minutes episode, and he once again went into the thing, I'm here to model how to have proper conversations. And
such an ass.
It's funny to me that people are trying to push it, because it seems like the progressive Mormon side is trying to prop him up as somebody that, like, a new rock star making the rounds in ex-Mormon or in progressive Mormondom or whatever. But he's so completely uncharismatic. Like he has the least infectious personality ever.
So he goes, here he is being non-contentious, wading into a group called Latter-day Lobsters, and out of nowhere posting, I didn't know who Jordan Peterson was when I accepted the invite to join this group. I've since discovered that he's kind of a weenie. And non-contention there. Modeling non-contention and proper conversations. But
flawless.
I'm gonna be if he bone. You know, I don't even know if he blocked me or not, but I just put weenies bone vaginas, but they also bone buttholes like McClellan and Jim.
And, I asked him what he like. I just asked what was your like. What is it that you don't like about him? And I got nothing.
Yeah, he was just trying to stir contention. He was modeling how to stir contention.
Because that's the other thing. It's like whatever. I mean. Whatever you think of Jordan Peterson, there's no summing that guy up. You know, like whether you like him or don't like him, the guy's a little too complicated to just go up or down in that fast, you know? And like that's the whole thing where he's like, "Oh, I looked into him." Like, I'm sure you did. Like, I'll bet
just
you
like he looked into Gays Against Groomers
and Guadamax, yeah, where it's like, you know, if anything, you probably went to sources that are already progressive sources. Probably saw some, you know, slanderous lies about him. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw like, oh, he says that, you know, women should be forced into monogamy with men, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, like
Jim Bennett follows Troy. Troy, everybody's gonna love Troy, man. Does anybody have beef with you? Well, I guess John DeLynn got a little mad at you one time on a Shermer episode, but
Kotaku doesn't like him.
The only people who doesn't like him is like the whole national media. But other than that, like he gets along with everybody. You know?
Just America.
Just America. Just Blue Church. Just all of Blue Church has a problem with Troy. And beyond that, like he gets along with everybody around here. Bennett follows. Oh, nice. No idea why. Why wouldn't I'd follow you? Let's see. But maybe I'll pull up some of the stuff that he said about that he discovered the Gays Against the Groomers as a hate group.
Get him on the show? Yeah.
Right.
That would be so funny. I wouldn't even know what to do.
What is this group? I've declared it a hate group. Goodbye. I must go. My wife says I shouldn't be here.
We'd have to preemptively be like, okay, full disclosure, we are very hateful and bigoted. To get that out of the way, now chastise us accordingly.
And then show us Go model how to have proper conversations with Mormons.
Yeah.
Please.
Let's do a practice like we're missionaries again, Jim. I'm the investigator and you're the missionary. You got to teach me how to model proper conversations without using your mom fucks pigs or anything like that. I know that's your go-to, but
This is Jim Bennett critiquing the Dallanate joke.
wait, what did he say? I didn't even see that
You
one.
want to see? He says, much of this is encouraging and should be applauded. His laudable call for love and respect for LGBTQ people is getting the most attention, but I'm particularly pleased with his newfound recognition that the two great commandments are not in conflict.
Oh.
The thing I'm happiest about is his admission that he has been too focused on the first. What are they again?
The love thy neighbor as thyself, or love God
as I have loved you, love one another, and love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah, it's a love shit. It's stuff that like
that
progmos will take and be like, that's all Jesus cared about, was that you love people, and love can only mean that you're always making them feel as comfortable as possible doing anything they want.
So far, LDS
if you give them total affirmation.
Yeah, that's what love is. Complete affirmation.
So far, LDS Bot has agreed with me on just about everything. Yes, doctrine can change or be clarified over time as the Lord reveals much knowledge to his prophets, more knowledge. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believes in continuing revelation, which means that God can reveal new knowledge or adjust current practices and teachings when it is necessary for the growth and progress of his children. Wow, LDS Bot. So this is the stuff he's just having a back and forth with somebody, and this person initially posted something from Gazing as Groomer. It's too small there. I'm not going to be able to zoom on it. And then he says, just look them up. Gazing as Groomer is a hate group, full stop.
Full stop. You always know that somebody's being real good faith when they end their sentence with full stop. It's like they're preemptively trying to be like, you actually can't argue with this. Sorry.
Yeah, he does that constantly. He does the I like to point to like the book by Gottman, and he points to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse of when you just can't have relations with somebody. And it kind of mirrors Karl Popper's paradox of intolerance. And it's the thing of like when you just can't get any further with a person. And I always forget what all of them are, but one of them is like stonewalling. One of them is like rolling your eyes. If they're rolling your eyes and just like taking you as like a joke. And then the other one is stonewalling. Like, nope, I'm done. I'm done talking. And it's just... Yeah. It's every single thing that he does if you sit there and watch it. But he's mirroring, he's showing us, he's modeling how to do it for all of us.
Oh, yeah. I think he's unable to control his emotions. I don't know. He strikes me as somebody who's just perpetually confused and angry about his confusion. I don't know. And he knee-jerks, and then he gets angry at himself that he knee-jerked, and now I got to backpedal somehow, but while still maintaining all of my original positions. I don't know.
Yeah. So what's weird to me about all this stuff and where I see it kind of coming all together, we were going to have Guadamax on tonight, but she felt like she had to back out of it. And she wanted to keep making her case that Kwaku and Jim were smearing them and overly smearing them. And she says she has receipts to show it. But then she felt like she had to back out of it because she feels like in the end, it'll just still be more smearing and it'll be dangerous for her and her family or something like that. I was totally open to her making the case. Maybe she couldn't make the case. Maybe she could. I think she probably could. But what it ultimately comes down to is the same thing that April person is pointing to, that there's this whole huge battle going on right now of painting anybody who's down for the proclamation of the family as being troglodyte, Taliban. And I think it all kind of plays in to I was talking to Cardin last night, and I was asking Cardin, like, Cardin, do you think Guadam should come on and still try to make a case or no? And Cardin goes, I don't care, man. Antifa and the Muslims and the Armenians are fighting in my backyard. Which, did you guys look at those clips on?
I didn't see the clips. I saw a news headline about it.
I linked them to you guys. I'll pull them up right here.
I know you don't fuck with Armenians.
They are fighting.
The Armenians survived Stalin. Don't fuck with Armenians.
Yeah. And so I talked about last week how James Lindsay's been warning of Drag Floyd event. You know, like we've set up the perfect, ambiance for a Drag Floyd event to happen. and then they're going to blame the Christian nationalists or something like a Desnat or something. They've been laying the seeds for it all along, type deal. But where is the dumb links? It's wild fighting, man. Here it is. I got it. But this is put up by Andy. No, you can't trust Andy. No.
Is he
You can't
also
trust
a
your
Desnat
lion eyes. He's a Desnat
Yeah.
Loonbat. He's a hate group.
Yeah, exactly.
I've looked into it. He's a hate group. So this is this is what James Lizzie's talking about. Like one of these things is going to turn into somebody's going to get killed and crap like this. And
Well,
and
wait
he
a
feels
minute.
like-
Wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Because these are minorities. Don't they understand that the lefties are...
I saw somebody say these Muslims better watch out. They're going to get called terrorists.
And then they'll be used to bolster the claim that the biggest threat is white supremacist terrorism in America.
Muslims will be called white supremacist terrorists. Yeah, that's the future that we're now in.
I did not see that. Holy shit. The cops had to save the fuck the police people from a bunch of conservative Muslims.
So Cardin says this is going on like right in his backyard. This fighting.
Damn.
Look at that. You see that guy try to face kick that other dude and that sorts of stuff. And straight up, like one of these is going to boil into going too far.
Yeah.
You know, and
So how is Drag Floyd going to work if it's an Armenian that does the bad thing?
Yeah, that would be tough. They're obviously hoping it wouldn't be the situation, but at the same time, too, they can just kind of wait and pick and choose because there could be multiple things that happen, you know.
Well, and also, I mean, it's just the whole thing where when shit goes down and it doesn't fit their narrative, they just drop it. Like,
yeah,
you
they
notice
just wait
how
for the right one. They wait for the right one.
Like the non-binary guy who shot up the gay club in Colorado. That story is gone from the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gone. They just
here's the Muslims protesting it. And but one of the other things James Lindsay pointed out is they have a little bit of an extra weapon with the Drag Floyd situation, is that it doesn't even have to be a cop that puts a knee on somebody. A Drag Floyd situation could be a suicide.
Yeah.
It could be like Mulvaney could commit suicide or something like that. And then
so what was it? So in the thing it says right there that they don't like the curriculum and they wanted to be able to remove their children from the classroom when the material is taught. Is that all they want? And the school is saying, no, you can't take your kids out of our gay class?
That's what it looks like.
No, you actually have to take gay 101.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't give a fuck what Muhammad says.
This is broken up into straight up fights with Antifa showing up to fight with the Muslims and the Armenians.
Teach your kids that butt plugs are not haram.
Oh man, I saw a whole entire thing of somebody trying to claim that Muhammad was woke.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if he had a 9-year-old wife, right?
There's that classic clip of Hitchens arguing with the Muslim lady who is claiming that Islam is feminist. It's just like oh boy.
Anyway, like everything is like a fight about the proclamation to the family versus not the proclamation to the family, and a push to try to make people who had very kind of basic, what was basic LDS belief in the 90s, seem to be the Taliban today. And this stuff just melts my brain. And it's kind of why I took a little bit of interest in the Desnat stuff. And Jim Bennett plays right into the whole thing of being the one who helps the Tribune create the messaging that these Desnat people are total loonbats who are crazy Taliban people, and they're the worst thing going on in there. And he's absolutely part of it. One of the reasons we were talking and asking Kwaku about it is because Guadamax says that Kwaku helps play up that role, and his irritator, Kwaku, has his side of that. He says, no, they really are as bad as I say they are, and that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think one way or the other, I still think the national media wants to run with painting that, and I'm not, as I've frequently said, when it comes to Maoists, none of us get a pass with that. We all get smeared as Desnat. If any Mormons considered Desnat, even ex-Mormons fall into that. That's how Maoism works.
Yeah.
You know, none of us are free of whatever the worst gets painted. But one of the things that I thought was kind of funny with all the whole entire thing is just this week, Benjamin Boyce. I'm not gonna play anything of it, but he had this guy on who's gone into a whole lot of detail about how, like, dudes, everything that's going on, everything that you're looking at, everything that's really happening is just Malthusian. It's all just Malthusian eugenics. That's all that's going on is they're just trying to get everybody to stop breeding. That is just every single thing is just like 1,000 little cuts of stop breeding. That's all it is. And I think he had a pretty good case for that. Let me see if I pull up. I just saw which one it is. Did I close out all of the thing? I'm so crappy at this. Oh yeah. Well, I'll just show them right here. So, do you see that Bogosian got to interview John Cleese? I'm excited for that.
I did. That'll be
I
cool.
didn't see the interview, but
Did you see that?
He hasn't released it.
Everybody was worried because it sounded like John Cleese had buckled and gotten rid of the Loretta skit from live adaptations of Life of Brian.
Oh,
And then he came out and tweeted, "No, I would never do that. Whoever's tweeting that shit out has their facts wrong." And I was like, "Oh, thank God!" I was so sad when I heard that.
Yeah,
I was like, "No, Cleese would never buckle."
So this episode here, how population control guides global governance, our eugenic overlords. This one with Jason Bradley, and he's got a whole channel. I think the channel is called
that's
Basically, my body
slightly aside. Oh, never mind.
Go
But because I was saying, like, because there's no way in hell John Cleese would ever back down. And I always say, like, the only thing Norm Macdonald ever did that disappointed me was when he apologized for saying retard.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, like, this is, I mean, what I suspect, I mean, I don't know, but what I suspect is because, like, that all happened when he was hiding a terminal cancer diagnosis. And I'm just guessing that, like, his people, his lawyers, his accountant was coming to him and saying, like, look, you're going to lose a lot of money. And I think he was just thinking about what he was leaving for his family and kids. And so to protect his assets and but yeah, that's the only thing he ever did that disappointed me was when he apologized for saying retard. You don't need to apologize for making jokes.
Are you kidding me? Because, like, I don't know if you've seen him say this. This is just terrible.
Didn't he say that joke had Down syndrome?
He started saying, like, yeah, you'd have to have Down syndrome to believe something like that.
No, I thought I saved it, but I did on my
go.
phone. But what he said was because just yesterday there was another terror stabbing attack in France, and somebody posted up the terrible thing that Norm Macdonald said. He said, "My fear is that if some Muslims dropped a nuclear bomb and killed 50 million Americans, that might cast some bad light on Muslims." I'll pull it up because he said it more clearly than that, but I thought I had it saved. Dang it. Oh, Pat Robertson died.
Yeah.
Watching all of the super compassionate, not at all bigoted atheists on that stupid atheist page, laughing and celebrating. Like, okay, you guys are the real, like Jim Bennett, you're the real models of how to get along with people, aren't you?
I know.
Yeah, and every single one of them, they post. I saw so many memes on the atheist pages of Pat Robertson's with the devil now, and
it's like ironic, isn't it?
That just falls on deaf ears with me. I don't get the joke. The whole thing is supposed to be just in oblivion now, right? Not.
It's them tipping their hands that they are basically a religious faith, and they think that Pat Robertson was so bad that he deserves nothing. He deserves eternal punishment. That's how bad Pat Robertson is. He deserves eternal punishment, which is like how perfectly religious of you.
Here it is. Good old Norman Norm. What terrifies me is if ISIS were to detonate a nuclear device and kill 50 million Americans, imagine the backlash against peaceful Muslims.
Oh, man. That might have been the biggest bummer celebrity death of all time.
Yeah. Oh, it came out of nowhere, man.
But yeah, back to that thing, that guy talking about how it's all just ultimately eugenics. I mean, and one of the things he does on his channel, it's called Everybody Shook, is Jay Dyer does it on his channel too. It's stuff I've been talking about, how like these supposed elites who run stuff have these wackadoo Malthusian beliefs, but you can read it in their own words or hear them say it or hear them, give speeches about it over podiums across 100 years. And he's got just really good documentation of all of it going back for a while. But I honestly think, like, if you see Scientific American pushing the trans stuff or all these different, like, not only can we make money, but we can also decrease the population. We can decrease the surplus eaters. I honestly think that's the consequentialist or the utilitarian game that they're playing in their heads. Is like anything is good that diminishes population.
Yeah.
And if it's, we'll hit it from 1,000 different angles, but our real ultimate angle is we need less people. And
we need less other people.
We need less other people. Yeah.
I should be allowed to live and thrive and have all the things I want, but there are too many of everyone else.
Yeah, but they go to, and Benjamin mentioned like this David Attenborough documentary that I saw years ago too, and I sensed the same thing from him. Even before getting all this, that every single episode just kind of goes into like overpopulation and too many people is the problem. Like David Attenborough just harps and harps and harps on it. And
so I don't know if there's. I think there might be. I think you guys might have caught the tail end of human optimism or something, and I just didn't. Right? Because you guys are like 10 years older than I am, and maybe this is off. Maybe you guys didn't catch any of this. But to me, overpopulation was just something you took as a granted, like that was just one of the, like, I grew up I would even throw out jokes about overpopulation. That was just it was this weird, I don't remember a world where we ever thought you should continue propagating the species. And I don't ever remember that.
I 100% think you're right. I do think that the language of that and the whole zeitgeist changed with your generation. And like I said, just recently sitting around some kind of music scenes of younger people in Salt Lake, they were all kind of sitting around kind of like edgy edgelord talking about how suicide is cool. And I'm not even joking.
No, that's what it is. I'm not even kidding. We like, that is a my generation thing. We idealize suicide and things like that. And I'm like, just recently coming to these conclusions, and I'm like, no, having kids is awesome. Getting married is awesome. And I'll say it like, and I'll say it to people who are like 10 plus years older than me. And they're like, well, yeah. And they act like that's, people, especially people who are very unplugged, that are not very much online. They'll be like, how the fuck you're 31 years old, man? How did you just figure this out? Like, no, they never told me. They told me the opposite.
I think you're 100% right. I do think it was like, it's maybe kind of why we harken back to the 90s is a better time, the end of history, the optimistic time. And a lot of people also joke like, in the 90s ain't coming back, you ain't getting it back, sort of deal. But it is true that I do think we got messaging at that time that the sky's the limit. We made it. We're here. Let's make all the babies and have all the fun, and everything's just about how much fun we can have while we're here.
Yeah, overpopulation just wasn't something you questioned. Like, it was just a thing.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's not even questioning that would get you like shunned. It's like that would scratch your head. Like, well, what do you mean we're not?
That guy wrote that book in the 70s. Where he predicted that like there would be 25 billion people by the year 2000 and all this shit, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what happened is basically the Marxists in universities just glommed onto that. And because that's things like, I remember the first time I heard about overpopulation was my older cousin who was in college. And he was, it's funny because he converted to the church and has a family now. But he was the guy who's like, you can't have kids. There's going to be too many people. We're, the population bomb, all this shit, and like he got it 100% from, and that's things like he studied illustration. That was his major, and somehow he got a Marxist education. Go figure.
Well, and it's always I harped on this last time, like based on what, like overpopulation. What's the bad thing that happens? Well, it means humans overtake the world. Why is that a bad thing? Well, it's because it might be bad for other species or whatever. I'm like, okay, but like, what the fuck would a polar bear do to me? Like if I just went up to a polar bear, he would just tear me up, right? He doesn't give a fuck about me because his polar bear god tells him like propagate the polar bear species. So maybe my human god is like, don't be a dick to other animals, but you have to have some type of a god to think. I don't know. I'm sick of this shit. I guess.
It's a religious faith. Alrighty, pulling up.
Yeah,
stuff.
so I'll pull up these other couple things here, but I wanted to just point out, because some of this is I'm just going to kind of point out some cool episodes people should check out. And we're not going to go over them because I want to go over more of the Zelf episode.
I knew it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I only heard you guys talking about that. I didn't.
The
watch
problem
any
is
of
they
it.
don't have a transcript, and I wish they had a transcript because I wrote down words, but maybe
Oh, man, that's a bummer.
sometimes
How does
transcripts
is
pop
the
up
trans-
later.
I
don't know how it
done
works.
by AI, right? Or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
but I think you
automated.
can turn it off because you don't want people to have it. Let's see here.
If that's the case, hello. Be more
So-
obvious.
This is one of the words that we've been getting into. Listen to this whole entire episode because it's something that I've mentioned that Victor Davis Hanson gets into too throughout history. I've mentioned Spangler and all that sorts of stuff, but this guy did kind of a bigger study, and then of course he got shunned out of universities for it. But he's doing some studies, and the guys over at Lotus Eaters have been interviewing him about his studies on oikophobia, which is the self-hatred, the self-hatred of a culture that comes up, that usually tends to come up as almost kind of like rat utopia. Like it comes up as with luxus, the word luxury from the Greek comes from that term. And as it grows, oikophobia almost always pops up as almost kind of like a natural thing, just like the rat utopia thing does. But I mean, I think there's some oikophobia with ex-Mormonism to Mormons that you got to get over. But I also don't think that means that you gotta reconcile and go become a Mormon again or something like that. It's just you got to watch out for the oikophobia you got, because not only does it kind of put you in some spots of being not very truthful about where your place really was relatively situated in history and how good or bad it really was or wasn't, but it also weakens you. It also weakens you for outside control people to come in and make fools of you and make you tap dance to their, or go to their pleasure island and then become their slaves or something like that, just in the general sense. But those other two that I was shown with Bogosian, he had a couple good episodes. One was that they were here on the screen here. He had one where he had a bunch of different people like Billboard Chris and Andy No and a bunch of different people who've actually been out fighting gender ideology stuff and getting in fights and stuff for it. And it's a good episode. And he talks about some of the stuff that they've been doing about, Billboard Chris knows a lot about what actually happens to the body if you go and start giving hormones to young kids, to the point like just the hormone level stuff they start giving to young boys alone at 12 gives you risk of lifetime without orgasm. Like the stuff's outrageous. Like it not only is it not reversible, it can do extreme damage, just the hormonal stuff. And I heard there was a debate with Dave Smith and some other guy just this week, and the guy was trying to give the same old apologies for like, oh, this stuff's totally reversible, it's fine, no, it's brand new and kids love it, they're totally into it. And the other funny one was this one here, this lady going into pretendians, which is those are people who lie about their Indian heritage. And she's an Indian who's gone to like all these different like high level places that have let people into the academy under the auspices like Elizabeth Warren lying about their Indian heritage. And she calls them pretendians. But what's funny about it is she points out that those people don't want to admit it, but then the organizations also don't want to admit it because they get all these tax breaks for it. And you can give them all the evidence in the world for it, and none of them want to. Oh, we can't look into it. We can't.
Hateful.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's ridiculous.
So you want to know the funny part about like whenever I see these debates all the time where people will bring up the fact that a lot of these hormones can stop a person from ever having an orgasm in their life, and the knee-jerk response to that is like,
"What's so great about orgasms?"
Well, it's always like, why are you obsessed with kids having orgasms?
Yeah, you're the weirdo.
It's always you're the creep. They always try to turn around on you, and you're the creep. Like, no, if I found out that like a drug I was giving my kid was going to keep him from ever having an orgasm. Obviously, he's 5. He's too young for that right now. But at some point in his life, he's going to want to do that stuff. And I want my kid to have all the stuff. And so it's any experience, it's like if it was going to make his balls fall off, and they're like, why you're so obsessed with kids' balls? Like, I'm not obsessed with kids' balls. I don't want my kids' balls to fall off because I like having balls. It let me have kids.
But it's also, it's Darvo. It's classic Darvo. Like, queer theorists are obsessed with other people's sexuality. And then when you criticize them, like, why are you obsessed with people's sexuality? Like, it's every Darvo.
Time. 100%. Here's the I'm gonna come just to show stuff. Once again, I'm just recommending stuff. Here
I got that thrown at me in an ex-Mormon group. An ex-Mormon group where all they've been doing is posting about pride, and anybody who complained about it, like, they made fun of them. And I didn't even complain about it. I made some joke. It was a dumb little sarcastic joke, but somebody tagged me and 2 others in this thing saying, like, hey, look at this study. It found that people who are homophobic oftentimes are secretly gay. And I was like, what? Why is you, like, the supposed ally, when I push back at all, your first reaction is like, what are you, gay? Like,
fag.
Well, I know. I'm not. Why do you think I'm bothered by that? If you think that I'm gay, I'll tell you why. I'm actually not gay. I'm straight. But
they actually sent you. They sent you an article that said, "Is it probable that anybody who says something's transphobic is gay?" And this is something that everybody should remember. This Betteridge's law. Betteridge's law of headlines is an adage that states any headline that ends in a question mark can be answered by the word no.
But it's just hilarious to me that their first line is to be like, what are you, gay? They're like, well, no, I'm not. I'm not bothered by the accusation. Like,
So this is the debate. It's a good debate if you want to listen to it. These are libertarians debating trans rights under attack, and Dave Smith, I think he kind of wiped the floor with this guy a little bit.
Like, what we actually believe about this issue, but the idea that there's this now reaction to this crazy new trend that is different from anything else we've kind of seen that has exploded in the last few years, to say that, hey, children are now being like indoctrinated into this radical new view that we did not have in our society for my entire life, my father's entire life, my grandfather's entire life, all of this. And now there are these state governments that are trying to say, hey, what can we do about this? Like, can we in some way say that, like, yeah, kids are not like allowed to make irreversible, permanent elective decisions until a certain age? Can we say that, like, oh, okay, yes, biological men can't come in and just destroy every women's sports record? To me, none of this is in conflict with libertarianism, and I don't see any reason why libertarians have to jump on this latest fad and go along with this modern religion that seems to demand more than any other religion in our society.
That's funny, just flashing into my mind is, I remember in the 90s, like in church and on Oprah on TV and stuff, one of the big debates was, how young is too young to pierce your daughter's ears? You remember? Like, I remember when that was a serious topic of discussion.
Oh, they used to get mad about it. They'd be like, if you pierce your baby's ears, that's child abuse. Of course, then you bring up circumcision, and they're like, that's different.
That's different. We don't care about men.
Yeah.
This is a really good little one. It just popped up today, but it was why communism is a failed religion, and it kind of sums up a lot of the different ideas really well in 50 minutes that we go over. This is I never say this thing. What if alt hist, which is what if alt history type stuff.
Oh yeah, his channel's great.
This is just not true, where Darwinistic struggle and life being hard is just normal across history, no matter what happens, and will never change. However, Marxism is in many ways an apocalyptic philosophy, in that it thinks that there will come a point where the working classes drive out the rich, and then we live in a utopia forever after. In my videos, I've consistently called communism a religion. This is since, according to Durkheimian terms,
Is this guy Canadian?
I think so.
Because he sounds exactly like what's his face, JJ McCullough.
Yeah. This is the Durkheimian description of what religion is: ritual, how to commemorate things; community, how do people come together; metaphysics, how does the world work; ethics, how should I live. And like I said, Durkheim was, the father of sociology back when it was a decent field. And one of the things I noticed this week, because getting into all this stuff, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Jacob Hansen had on Osler to go after Dan McClellan. And they went after Dan McClellan really hard. And it was actually a really good episode that they have their religious priors, and also Dan Ellsworth on Mormonism with the Merv had a good episode too, where they were just talking about Deutero-Isaiah, but Dan Ellsworth did a great breakdown of the ways people who call themselves expert academics fudge stuff. And the whole first hour of that episode is just awesome breakdown of the way you can fudge things as an expert.
Dan Ellsworth he's like the master of less is more.
Yeah, for sure.
Anytime I see any of his
World Dan McClellan.
Osler's Bizarro World Dan McClellan, but Ellsworth, he kind of gets into it. But what I would say is, I think if there's anybody who's doing apologetics well for that church, is him, because it's just quick, simple, cut it down, break it down, and if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, move on.
Well, and he's very to the point, and he also just his Facebook comments I'll see. It's I don't know, they're the best responses, because they're always they're short. Sometimes they can be long, but they're as long as they need to be. He's very much, I don't know what I would spend like a paragraph saying, he can say in like a sentence. He's very well spoken.
Yeah. So this episode is great. I highly recommend it, because it gets even into the stuff about Hegel and the Gnostics and all that stuff that I've been a little bit on about. James Lindsay's been on about, that there's been a weird wackadoo religion underneath stuff, and Marxism is part of it. And part of the frustration with the academic world is so much stuff has been religious masquerading as something more rigorous. And it's a huge frustration. Like, in some senses of the word, even though James Lindsay's making such alliances with religious people, at the same time too, the direct attack at that Gnosticism stuff and that Theosophy stuff is almost kind of more like doubling down into atheism. It's like, hey, we're not going to just go after these Bible Belt theists anymore. We're going to go after you wackadoo deists who have these big wackadoo super ideas for how the universe works too.
Yeah, Bible Belt theists seem to be the easy. That was one of my things with Zelf on the Shelf, is that recent one that we're going to go over it, but that seemed to be most of their arguments were against those guys. Very straw manny. Anytime they talked about this mainstream like trans argument, they were arguing against people who legitimately hate gay people, who are an increasing minority in America. Yeah.
And that stuff is the same as any sort of religion, because like in the sense like anything's a tool, it can be used to, like, fire can be used for destruction, and it can be used for good and all that sort of stuff. But
that's why it feels like it's weird to it feels like it's weird to celebrate like Pat Robertson's death and things like that, because like when that most of the people they were arguing against, it feels like, congratulations, you defeated Pat Robertson. That's like that's easy. That's easy shit.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of
is a lot more difficult.
A lot of the problem, with the new atheism stuff, is it's kind of like they were going after low hanging fruit a little bit, and when they got to some people who had a little bit more higher things, part of the problem is that the more nuanced or philosophical versions of religion, they kind of bought into it at the same time. So, like, how do you go after something that you're also buying into in weird ways? And that, I don't know. I'm going to pull up that episode with Dan Ellsworth with Mormonism and Murph just to reference it for people. It's called Deutero-Isaiah Debunked, and I thought it was a great episode. And I don't give two craps about Deutero-Isaiah. And I still don't give two craps about Deuter Isaiah. So I'm
Very
saying,
difficult for me to give a shit about the Bible enough
yeah.
to do these videos.
But that's what I'm saying is like this is still good even if you don't give a crap about Deuter Isaiah, because the way
I'm
the
curious
first
about
hour.
it, just because I listened to so much of the Bible Geek.
Oh, you'd probably like the Deuter Isaiah stuff too, because I think Dan Ellsworth does. He kind of points to how Dan McClellan will say stuff experts say, and no, your chosen experts say. There's a lot of different experts who say other things too, and he'll even point to how some of those experts don't agree with me and my conclusions, or they even kind of think the same conclusions as Dan, but they don't agree with the claim that he's making there.
The way Dan talks about experts is the way popes talk about previous popes.
Exactly.
Like, you're referencing yourself, asshole.
Exactly. It's 100% true. It's like the academic consensus. You just like make this announcement. The academic consensus agrees with me, and that's such a lie, because more times than not, it's just not true. Like you can find all sorts of academics who think the other thing. Even academics who have your same conclusions but don't agree with you on that specific area. And so these guys. And then also, I mean, I'll show it on pick out that episode, and then this one on Thoughtful Faith, Sex in the Bible, Osler and Hansen, and most of this is set around taking on Dan McClellan. And I think they're really good episodes, even if you disagree with their conclusions. Their critiques of Dan McClellan are right in line with some of the stuff that we've been saying in the sense of like the way he uses, I'm a schmexpert.
I'm a linguistics expert. I'm a theology expert. I'm a psychology expert. I'm an ancient languages expert. Like whatever he happens to be talking about, he's conveniently an expert. And I like that thing where you said it's like just because you reference something in one of your papers doesn't make you an expert on that. You know,
I published a paper.
I'm a PhD, and in my paper, I referenced an MIT person. I'm a math professional now. I'm a math PhD now. Yeah. I referenced. I don't know who's a math. I referenced Pythagoras in my humanities paper. Now I'm a math expert, which is exactly what he does. Like if he thinks that he referenced some sort of linguistic thing or referenced some sort of a psychological thing, then he goes and announces himself as an expert in that thing because there was a reference in his divinity humanities papers to it.
And he got an A on it. So
and he got an A. Yeah. Do you know how hard it is to get an A-? Oh my gosh. I'd like to go in and try to get an A- in one of those classes. It's hard, man. It'd be hard.
Like you don't even have to have proper grammar anymore.
No. I mean, I could show you the red marks on one. But I wonder if I could find that paper that has all the red marks and has like because I did it so fast. I didn't correct my Spanish grammar. It was written in Spanish, that paper was, and I zipped it out that night. Didn't have time to correct it, and so I had just a ton of typos. And so many red marks, and there's an A right at the top of it.
Did you get an Estrella de Oro?
Yeah, I got Estrella de Oro and
Buena, bien hecho.
But that professor was awesome. I love that guy. He was real deal. He was one of the OGs who retired, who actually had a ton of classical training. But he was already up on the thing of like, we're not going to grade hard on any of these guys. We don't want them to go away. But anyway, check those two things out just for how they, like I said, you don't have to agree with their conclusions, but they make great points about processes. Great points. Great points. I think we're all the way to the topic, the people at hand, which once again, I think if you view stuff under, no.
Bummer. Yeah, we are back.
So we just have to wing it. Man, and I had like a list of like the things that I could click to quickly on the stuff that they said that goobery. But they front loaded their gender ideology, and then the rest of it was kind of talking about divorce stuff. And I'll be honest, like some of their divorce critique, like I don't necessarily disagree with. Like they talked about no fault divorce, although in the Thomas Sowell way, everything's a trade-off. Like I am like, even if you want to say that like women most affected by no fault divorce, I bet you could make a feminist argument of why no fault divorce hurt women. Like I'm more than positive you could go make a feminist paper about women most affected on either side of that. I'm more than positive, and go get a humanities A for it.
My name is Tanner.
I'm Sam.
Today we're doing kind of a special episode. So
that was pretty good. That was a good joke.
My dad recently sent me a video from Professor Jared Halverson, who's a professor of ancient scripture at BYU. And it seems like Jared is going through the New Testament and doing, a little Sunday school.
Man, what transcript up? Maybe if I emailed them and asked them to put a transcript up, they say, I just want to talk shit.
The one he talks about.
Just help me talk some shit. Just help.
Look, Tanner, here's the problem. You look a lot less stupid now than you used to. So we can't talk shit just based on looks alone.
He moved one direction on the spectrum, and now he's just
divorce. And then he talks about queer issues, but from the lens of like the scripture about eunuchs, which we'll get into that. But I wanted to. I've listened to this talk probably like 4 or 5 times through because I really wanted to.
Like Jared, yeah, because
what he was saying.
We won't get to it because now, since I don't have transcripts, we won't jump that far. But I like their talk about divorce stuff and no fault divorce. I mean, there was some stuff in there I agreed with them on, totally.
Oh, for sure. So the thing with, like, the only person, they keep saying that people are against no-fault divorce, and I need to look more into no-fault divorce to know what they're talking about. But the only person I've heard ever really complain about his wife being able to divorce him without consent is Crowder. And, like, he was pretty roundly condemned. Like even his supporters are like, I don't know about that one, man.
Yeah. But I was just saying to flip, and I'm sure I could do it right now. I put out the challenge right now. So I don't know what you call them both. One's fault divorce and one's no fault divorce. Is that the technical term of each of them, or what was the one? What was the other one called?
I think I have no idea.
I guarantee you, divorce attorney. I guarantee you, there's feminist papers on both sides of the issue. Like women most affected, fault divorce. Good.
Oh yeah.
Women most affected, no fault. Good.
Well, that was one of Sam's. One of my favorite quotes was Sam, at one point saying, "It tends to be women who sacrifice their own needs and desires for the good of the family, while the man gets to go out and live his dream."
Yeah,
cubicle work. All right, come on, like, cubicle workers.
People just love. Just everybody knows. You ask a man like, do you want to spend your life in a coal mine? And they're like, fuck yeah. It's like
my
fishing
dream.
Or hunting or watching sports. It's our favorite fucking thing. We want to die 20 years early of black lung. That's why we do it, stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My uncle, he was a sewage worker for years. He's basically deaf because there's so many like loud instruments down in the sewers that he worked in for 20 something odd years. He can't hear it anything. That really was his dream. It was his dream.
I kind of wonder actually, is there any data like, because I don't know, but I would guess that like coal miners, sewage workers, bricklayers are probably more likely to be married than single. Because single men without any reason to work that hard and that shitty of a job probably wouldn't do it. The people that are doing that are doing it for their families.
You sound like a bigot.
And be able to give a meaningful response. And I've written so many essays in response and filmed, hour segments of me just like yammering into a camera. And I was like, scrap it all. Let's just back up. I'll have a conversation with the brilliant and radiant Samantha and just get it done in a way that feels more natural and conversational. Because
she had her speech at the women's conference. Did you guys listen to that?
Oh, no.
Was it online?
I don't want to give you spoilers. Should I give you spoilers?
Oh, go ahead. Spoil it for me.
You're predetermined to just be what you are. So just live and laugh.
She has the facial expression of somebody who legitimately believes that. Somebody who's actually just died inside is like, yep, it's all predetermined. Fuck it, get divorced. Fuck it, drink wine. Fuck it.
You were predetermined to pay me my consulting fee.
Is a little kind of strip some humanity away from the experience. And studying communication in college, we know that we learned
from using communication from Mills University, BYU, Idaho.
Yes.
We know.
Well, when you read the text, it's like people read text things.
Who did that? That was pretty good.
I shouldn't make fun of his laugh. That's it. Yeah.
Like 30%. More more aggression than is what is
That
intended.
makes so
Like,
much
I'm not
Yeah.
somebody who gets annoyed at laughs. Like I kind of think it's funny when somebody has like a specific laugh, but other people get annoyed at laughs.
It doesn't bother me.
Rich Evans.
I'm just a dick.
Have you noticed
Ro-
there's some guy, some dedicated guy who every year
Every year
puts out a
together
video
combo- Yeah.
that's just every Rich Evans laugh from the last year. There's one after the other, and he puts it out every year.
I love Rich Evans' laugh though.
you know,
Yeah.
Roseanne Barr was on Michael Malice, and she talked about how her laugh was part of what got her noticed and got her famous. And it got so big that I guess you kind of don't even notice, but they end the whole intro of the Roseanne series, like the music thing,
Oh,
with her
yeah.
laughing at the end of it.
That's right.
And that was all just kind of a nod to her very peculiar laugh, and it's been a big part of her life.
I never
which
even
is why
thought
there's
of
so
that.
much breakdown when it comes to online
Yeah.
communication, especially in places like Twitter. And I have to say, most of my interactions with
Wait, Roseanne's all
Okay, wait.
super
This-
based. Go listen to her Michael Malice. She's super based.
Yeah,
I love Roseanne.
I'm gonna have
She's
to
a
listen to
treasure.
it. But this, okay, pay attention to what he says right here. This is, if I'm correct about where you are, this is exceptionally retarded. What he's about to say.
members of the church and believers of all variety these days, save for the ones that are like up close and proximate, like with my family members and things who are awesome and great and loving, affirming, and cool and all that. Just the
Affirming.
strangers, believers that I interact with are mostly online, and they're mostly like really, really negative interactions. Not even me being like, oh, I'm reading into this, but like them being like,
Yeah.
you're queer, you deserve to die by the law of the Old Testament. You're a degenerate, filthy apostate, and we
Jordan
That's
Peterson's a
most
weenie.
of his-
You're a weenie. Bigger. Oh, hate speech, hate speech group.
Most of my interactions with Mormons online are them saying you're queer and deserve to die.
I do not believe you.
No, I don't believe you even a tiny bit.
Yeah, no, I just plain don't believe you.
Bigots.
ought to invoke the laws of the doctrine of blood atonement and ritualistically kill you for having an opinion
Okay,
contrary.
they absolutely don't say that. I forgot it got that retarded. He got even more stupid.
Ritualistically kill you.
Yeah.
Receipt.
Did that 30% thing you mentioned, was that some study you saw?
Yeah,
Because that
yeah,
makes
I-
complete sense. I didn't know that.
Yep.
It's hard when
And
you-
it might even be higher than that. I don't know the exact percentage, but people definitely read things as being
Mhm.
much more aggressive and
Yeah.
angry than they're actually intended.
I avoid Twitter these days, but I felt like towards the end of being on Twitter, if I would engage with a believer in like what I felt was a really like civil, respectful way, it often felt like they
When I type stuff to Jim Bennett, I think it reads 30% less angry than I'm actually at him.
I don't know. See, I think he might be somewhat right about that thing that he says, but some of the claims he makes in this video are so off the wall bullshit that like his whole male and female brains, there's no difference at all. And even-
That's
even-
not true. You can look it
know.
up in 2 seconds.
Even Sam was like, I don't know about that, man.
It's,
like,
well,
no, it's
it's because they had different life experiences, so they have.
Trust me, I'm a
different
man.
No, female and male brains have dimorphism to them. That's what we brought up. Exelnasic. How do you say your name?
Excellent.
Exelansic.
Two different versions of it.
Well, it's the same thing. I
I
just
thought it
did,
said the same thing. Exelansic. She says Exelansic, doesn't she?
But-
I don't know.
Yeah.
So much of what's interesting about her is she goes into how everything is dimorphic, like your vocal box, your pancreas, your liver, there's sexual dimorphism in everything. You can't surgery it away.
What the hell do they
Yeah.
think happens to your like? What the hell do they think hormones do?
Yeah, and that's
It pauses
Gad's
It pauses your sexuality. It's just the pause button.
but that's Gad Sad's what he says, or E.O. Wilson going. Oh, we saw Lex Friedman block Gad Sad, but E.O. Wilson, that one of the initial Evo Psych persons, like the old joke they'd say is like all these different types of people who believe stuff. Elliot J. Gould, the Marxist.
Wait, we got Troy admitting that he's doing the death threats to Tanner from fake accounts. Troy's about to get canceled for the second time.
What's this? I'm not looking at the thing. Oh man, Troy's got. You've already at war with the entire U.S.
Haven't we
media,
taught you already, old man?
And now he's taking on Tanner. Not okay, man. He's gonna get killed. It was all Troy telling them. Yeah, that's hilarious. What were we just talking about? Oh, Gad said E.O. Wilson, all those Evo psych people, they make the joke that they say they think evolution came up right to the neck of human beings, and that's where it stopped. Just from here up is the only place evolution never touched, and then after that, it's
reading
way.
anything on evolutionary psychology, that's a conclusion you have to jump to. It's that every part of you evolved except for the brain. The brain stopped evolving about 100,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and is just its perfect form. We reached our final form 100%.
Well, a lot of the different people, like I said, Stephen Jay Gould, who was the guy who used Marxist heuristics to come up with his type of evolutionary biology, and he used to get in fights with Dawkins about it because he's the guy who kind of pushed like directed equilibrium, which he kind of thought the experiences punctuated the equilibrium, which the experiences of the mother can change evolution like that type stuff. Maybe it's truth or maybe it's not, but he was using a Marxist heuristic to try to put that together. But that guy was super anti Evo Psych. And if you ever hear somebody call Evo Psych, they're just so stories or something like that. That's usually somebody, well, they don't even know it, but they're referring back to Elliot J. Gould. And that's why we refer to that book of The Ape That Understood the Universe, Steve Stewart Williams, and his whole last couple chapters just kind of abolish all that, just in the sense of saying, hey, no, there's real science here and it's obvious. Stop it. Going all the way back to E.O. Wilson and through the present. So.
It just like
Science
wouldn't take me in good faith,
Mhm.
and so then it would just be, and I was like, well, this is pointless.
Yeah, it's hard on like social media where you're not having the face-to-face interaction. You're not being able to like really truly empathize with the person, look them in the eyes, hear the tone of voice, see the sincerity in their face. So I think that's, and again, that's why I wanted to do this video in this way, just so we can have like a real human conversation.
Yeah, because think how much we project.
I like when I say stuff to Jim Bennett, like I would rather it would be like face to face so he could see like in my eyes that I think he's a yutz.
I just like that. That's such a supernatural way to look at that. Like you mean countenance? Like so you can feel their spirit? Like really? That's what you think? You know, that's how you find truth? Is you surmise it by looking into their eyes? Come on. That's magical thinking.
Yeah.
Even just in regular life, and then
It's science.
add the layer of it being like behind, it's digital, and that's even more like you're reducing who you are to just like this concept. Yeah, it's just tough.
So for backup,
so Jerry's a video.
Imagine reducing who you are to some concept. What kind of person would do that?
Okay, is this just a personal thing, or does it bug people that Tanner is constantly just dicking around on his phone through the whole because he's not even
he's getting ready. Isn't he getting ready?
I guess so. I don't know. He probably is. That's just a personal thing. He's. It's not even a live stream. It's almost like you.
Oh yeah, it's a recording or something.
I don't know. I should calm down.
It's getting more traction, which is actually
right now.
In my opinion, good. I was surprised at how much I like Jared Halverson because he seems like the type of Latter-day Saint
come on,
that
get to
I
the
was,
stuff,
which is just
man.
like trying to learn. Whereas the pendulum has swung a little too far, and I'm like, you haven't swung far enough. You've been over here and you swung this far. Now we need to really find some balance. And I think as we're talking about gender and orientation and queer issues and things like that,
how do we swing farther?
That is a perfect example.
How do we just remove the dick and balls of infant boys at birth and keep them preserved until they decide? Like we just make Ken dolls.
I'm 13. I choose my dick and balls.
Yeah, you need to not know what your assigned sex at birth was. Like, let's swing further. Why not?
We don't want to fling you into this life of a sex without your consent.
Of what we're talking about with these artificial binaries that have been imposed, and then forcing everybody to identify as one or the other when that is
forcing them. It's a conspiracy. It's the conspiracy.
Literally not how
the conspiracy of life. Life was always a conspiracy at us.
It is in nature. So, we're told the traditional narrative is there are two genders. They are mutually exclusive. You're born either one or the other, and never the two shall meet.
Except for the percentage of people who are intersex, but for some reason
they don't.
Wait a minute. Wait. What are we talking about?
Jump.
Are we talking about gender? Or are we talking about sex right now?
Yeah,
are we talking about because they're the same thing what I want them to be, but as soon as I don't want them to be, they're not.
We need to do a drinking game of when people are talking.
Oh, Christ.
You can take the pros or not the pros. When people are talking queer and gender theory, when they category jump willfully. And sometimes when they're Mott and Bailey gaming, they pretend to truly separate them, but most of the time they category jump like wild. They start with gender and then they talk intersex immediately right there.
Don't count.
Even they don't.
You know, that's
aren't
one
really
to me
mentioned.
when someone's like, we're all born male or female in the family proclamation. It says everyone male or female. I'm like, how was that not just like dead in the
Yeah.
water? Because it's like intersex people literally exist. So you can't
Intersex people literally
Literally
exist.
exist. Except they literally
say
don't. Not in the way that you're talking about them. No, they don't.
It's not a third gender.
There's no third gender. There's
it's
no
one or
not
the other
male or
gender.
female.
It's one of the other genders with a malformity, and that's not gender, sex. Oh, see, they're making me jump the
Do
category.
they just think that intersex people don't exist? Is that what's happening? No, that's like nobody thinks that. But everybody understands that genetic mutations exist. In fact, people think intersex people exist more than they actually do. Like, because people, when you tell a random person, if you would have told me when I was 15 years old, what do you think I would have known intersex, but if you said hermaphrodite, what do you think a hermaphroditic person looks like? I'd be like, well, he has a penis and a vagina and he produces sperm and egg. Like, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what most people probably think, but that's not
They still think it. If you ask people,
oftentimes the case is that, like, some organizations will classify you as intersex if you have an enlarged clitoris or a micro penis. Like, that's absurd.
If you tell people on the internet that there has never been a human in human existence that could both gestate a baby and inseminate somebody else, that has never ever once ever existed, they will be shocked and disagree with you and scream at you.
I probably would have doubted that if I had heard it when I was younger and didn't really know about any of this stuff. But they always do this thing where they go to animals and trees. Like, there's some trees that can pollinate themselves. There are certain species of snake that can change its sex. We're not like
we are mammals. Mammals have existed 200 million years. That's at least the least amount of time, probably longer, that separation.
And like even like Klinefelter syndrome, most people with Klinefelter syndrome XXY, they don't even know. Like, and unless for some reason you get some kind of tested, genetic test for it, you probably don't even know.
Well, last time I got into an argument with somebody about this, they were like, well, you really think you can tell somebody's gender just by looking at them? I'm like, yeah, almost always. And they're like,
with stunning accuracy.
You think you're so good at that? What would possibly be like this? He seriously was asking me, like, why do you think you can tell that? I was like, well, because I'm an animal. And animals actually have a need to tell. Sexually reproducing animals have a need to tell the difference between the sexes of the animal. And he's like, for what? I was like, for mating. Are you trying to? And he's like, oh, are you going to have sex with all these people? I was like, no, I'm not. But that's why I needed it. That's why I needed the ability to tell the difference between men and women by a glance. Probably by a smell. I don't know. Probably by a lot of ways that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah. Once again, I brought this up before. Colin Wright has this channel, Reality's Last Stand. His girlfriend is Christina Buttons. She famously had a fight with Matt Walsh, thinking Matt Walsh was too hard. So if you think Matt Walsh is too harsh, these guys agree with you. But then they're going to have harsh truths in here, which says these guys are playing with language and playing with category jumping, and it's just all not true. Evolutionary biologists, Heather and Brett, they go into this, Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying go into this all the time, deeply. Anybody who has any sort of expertise, actual expertise in evolutionary biology, knows that stuff is exaggerated and fudged purposefully by queer and gender theorists.
Did you guys watch? Today I watched that Jordan Peterson interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Did either of you guys see that?
I didn't see that whole episode. No.
So I watched the whole episode, and like, I don't know much about the guy, and there's obviously going to be a lot of things I disagree with him on, but it was crazy to me how it felt watching somebody who wants to be a politician saying things that I'm pretty sure he actually believes. Like, weird. It was weird because, like, he's a major environmentalist. And he's talking about how you cannot convince people that climate change is a problem by telling them that like 90% of scientists agree on this or 100% of scientists agree on this, because people have very good reason to distrust institutions, especially with how they handled COVID. And I was like, oh, that's a very reasonable thing you just said there. I am not am not accustomed to that happening in the political realm.
Yeah. Speaking of kayfabe, I saw Savvy D mention that the Iron Sheik died.
Yeah.
And there was actually one of the big controversies of kayfabe, busting kayfabe, was that at some point in the 80s, the Iron Sheik, I can't remember who he's out with. I think it was with Randy Savage. There was a photograph taken of them having lunch or dinner together at some restaurant, and it became one of the first like kayfabe busting things in that whole thing. These guys are mortal enemies. Why are they eating lunch together? And it became a huge scandal. One of the first times the wrestling kayfabe got busted was with the Iron Sheik in the 80s.
At what point, like, who wasn't aware of that? I was under the impression that they all knew and were just like, yeah, we love it anyway.
Rogue Cave. I bet you I can find the picture. And it was a scandal. It was a scandal in the 80s. Here. Kayfabe. Come on, play, you stinking thing.
Now, where did you keep your gig? Did you keep it in your mouth? And some people used to keep it in your mouth and tight.
Yeah, they're not
the
a show.
finger and do it. First, I may put him on the tape him,
Right.
and some part is only
Yeah, that's not good enough. Anyway, back to this other kayfabe, but pretending. Well, no, these guys actually probably believe it too. I mean, these guys. I think Tanner believes. There's some queer theorists who know that they don't believe what they're doing, because actually, if you even like look at Judith
Tanner
Butler,
doesn't. Yeah,
Judith Butler will say straight up that she knows that this doesn't follow the science, but it's politically useful. Judith Butler says that 100% says that. She's directly honest with that. It's a political decision to fudge this stuff.
Everybody is born.
And Tanner doesn't understand.
Yeah, he just believes.
It's not true.
I remember that being sort of a thought exercise at church or in BYU classes where they try and get you to just, mull on thought experiments. Can't remember what one it was. But the sort of the answer that was sort of given as the best thing to do is like the parents just kind of pray about it, figure out what gender they want to assign to their intersex child, and like God will steer you right. So don't worry about it.
Which seems contrary to what their argument against trans issues is to begin with. That people are indoctrinating kids, making them making decisions about gender for them.
Yes.
Overriding their agency to make these decisions for themselves or to live.
Absolutely.
And it's like, how is choosing a child's
The thing is, like, it's such a category jump too to say that those really difficult issues in really rare scenarios where they kind of can't tell which way the kid's going to fall, but they are going to fall to one gender or the other. But to point to those things and say that's the same thing that's going on with the social contagion. That's any single kid here who gets like a little bit of a different haircut or likes the color pink is totally the same thing.
Yeah, well, even if it weren't such a category jump, the argument itself is really stupid, because it's like the whole pray about your intersex kid thing. Like that's only really an issue if you have somebody who is at that exact like 50-50. Oh my God, which one are they? Like that is gotta be the most rare thing to have ever happened in biology.
So I went over and I plugged in no fault divorce and went to Wikipedia. And it's just hilarious because, the second paragraph of history and the section of the history of no fault divorce. The first modern no-fault divorce law was enacted in Russia in December 1917 following the October Revolution of the same year, regarding marriage as a bourgeois institution.
It's always the case, man.
Okay.
Get this, so
I'm against no-fault divorce, I guess.
I'm literally just scanning through, and there's a whole section of arguments for no-fault divorce, and there's like 4 paragraphs. Arguments against no-fault divorce. This is the first paragraph. The National Organization for Women opposed the introduction of no-fault divorce in New York State because it will allow a party who actually is at fault to obtain a divorce in which, quote, alimony, maintenance, and property division, close quotes, would be determined without the judge considering, quote, the facts, behavior, and circumstances that led to the breakup of marriage. So you're right. It was the fucking feminists who were the first to argue against it because they said it would hurt women and it would allow shitty men to get away with
every
shit.
time, man. Every time. Like, I didn't even need to know that. I didn't need to look it up. Like, there's not a thing on this planet that women most affected. I mean, remember, Hillary Clinton said that all the women were most affected about the
Holy
at the
shit.
deaths
Women
of
are
war.
the primary victims of war because their husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons die.
Which, by the way, is a sad thing.
Yeah, it's their
that's the
victims.
craziest
They're
part.
They're victims. Yeah, but they're not the most victim. They're
Yeah, no, the
all
guys
I've
who get
been-
blown up, they're the biggest victims.
Yeah, all I've been thinking about lately is that like we're just a fucking team, like men and women. We're supposed to be a team, and everybody who's telling me that I'm not supposed to be a team member with my wife can fuck off. Because if I die in a war, I want somebody to be sad that I died in a war. I also want somebody to be really fucking sad for my wife that she lost her husband in a war. That's really fucking sad for both of us. I don't know why we have to compare who it's more sad for. Like, it's obviously it's worse for the person who died, I guess. But like, even at the same time, if you have a choice between dying or your wife dying, you'll choose to die probably. So it's difficult to say who that's worse for.
So the second paragraph on arguments against no-fault divorce. So there are two paragraphs, and they are both feminist arguments. The second paragraph goes like this. A paper published in the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy written by Douglas Allen on the economics of same-sex marriage argues that the introduction of no-fault divorce led to a six-fold increase in just 2 years after a century of rather stable divorce rates. This is the good one. Also, the law increased the rate at which women entered the workforce, increasing the numbers of hours worked in a week, and increased the so-called feminization of poverty. And increased the age of the feminization of poverty. Because so it wasn't just men who were poor.
Wait a minute. Did we find a feminist who's trying to smash the glass floor?
Yes. Feminization of poverty. Jesus Christ.
Well, cheers to her for the consistency, at least.
Oh, man. No, that was a guy.
I left this and came back in because I was hoping it would make the transcript of the show, which has happened before. But
Jalen H. said that about gay people. It would be good for them to be excluded from positions.
I have a list here of stuff that they said, and they did front load talking about the stuff, but we've already kind of hit on it. But they say that they love ContraPoints. We've spent some times dunking on ContraPoints here, which once again, one of the things that they said about ContraPoints is they said that ContraPoints says, oh, there's still stuff that's up for debate, like sports and all that stuff. And I wonder if they're only admitting that because they saw Michael Shermer on Mormon Stories just light into that idea. But it's still up for debate. But they overlooked the point of where we said ContraPoints, or we pointed out that ContraPoints said no, stuff's not up for debate. Like ContraPoints kind of baited that. She said there's stuff that's still maybe up there, still that, but no, it's not up for debate. Our lives and things are up for debate. That stuff doesn't matter. That's what ContraPoints ultimately got to in those videos, is that shut down all debate on this stuff. You can't debate my life. That's what she says. I mean, am I misrepresenting that?
No. ContraPoints is almost as much of a hack as what's his Philosophy Tube.
Oh yeah.
But then says we have to be respectful and kind, and it's like, how kind is it to tell people that they're not allowed to be in public? And the thing is they don't even want people doing it in private. The reason that the like Stonewall, the uprising that happened that's kicked off the gay rights movement, is because the police were coming into
a private space,
private spaces where gay people could just be themselves outside of the public eye and arresting people illegally. And because
and then you have a Stonewall envy from
and they even said
Stonewall came about because of legitimate, for real oppression.
Yeah,
like the guys at Stonewall had a point. There's nobody like that. You can be gay anywhere you want now. You can go in public and be gay. Believe me.
We pointed that guy, Benjamin Boyce, had him on. He was like an old school gay guy, and there's all these old school gay guys, but he also claims that one of the reasons we don't have enough of these old school gay guys is because too many of them died from AIDS. But he said those Stonewall people would not be down for the fake new kayfabe extra push into this stuff. And that guy, he was on Benjamin Boyce's channel. We brought him up on here before, but I can't remember his name.
Just today at work, I was talking to both the gay coworkers, and one was raised Mormon, the other one was from Louisiana and raised Baptist. And I was bringing up that thing, I was talking about that thing that you've talked about, and we talk about how, the whole idea that, Mormonism is so super patriarchal. And I said, like, I only ever knew henpecked men. And both of these gay guys went, oh, yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
100%. It's just known, man. And these guys said it again at some point in here, because dang it, I wish I had the things, but she said men just don't, this guy and men don't know what it's like to just be born into a world and go into a place where it's just women making all the decisions for you. And it's just women who are the systems of power. And I'm like, chick, like we've all grown up in the longhouse here. You know, we all went to grade school, elementary school, junior high school. Those worlds were dominated by feminine. Well, I don't call it
Also,
feminism,
like
but
even
by
in
women.
I'd
And I'm
have
not
to say
even
that,
mad at it. Like I'm not like some of those women were awesome.
yeah, I'd have to say that even in her world, like neither did she, because she converted later in life. So she didn't even grow up in the patriarchy. So she also doesn't have the lived experience to make the claims that she's making. But
in my life and in my jobs, because I've had a lot of different females for bosses and all that sort of stuff, it's just not true of modern us that I've only lived in places or been around things where it's just men making all the decisions. Even in the wards I was in all sorts of places where it was women who were steering things for me as a young person growing up. And I'm not mad at it. I'm like,
she brings this up.
A lot of women were totally cool.
She brings this up several times throughout this video, and she's always talking about she's talking about it as if, like, one of the things she says is that, oh, he doesn't know what it's like to have the only person you can go to advice to be a woman. I was like, okay, you don't know what that's like. You don't know what it was like to have the only person you could go to advice from be a man, because she's talking about the bishop. She mentions that explicitly, and I'm like, how many times did I go to a bishop for advice, and how many times did I go to my mother for advice?
0 times bishop in my life, 1,000,000 times my mother.
Yeah, I never asked a bishop for advice, and even if I did a couple, like even if
0 times,
you as a Mormon did it a couple times, maybe that's fine. But how many times did you ask your mother for advice? Like I cannot count them.
Yeah.
So
my dad was my bishop for a little bit, but that doesn't count.
Oh yeah, I guess.
But I didn't ever go to him as like in the role as bishop. You know, I'd like to ask you as Bishop Dad, you know.
So there's a couple things that he goes over. Like one of the things that he does, he's talking about how much people love that the story of the adulterous woman, who they want to stone her, and Jesus says who is without sin cast the first stone. And he says people act like that's such a good story, but we're not taking into account that, like, wow, we had a system set up to where the rule was that if a woman fornicates with a married man, that she gets stoned to death. So it's this whole thing, like, we can't celebrate incrementalism, right? We can't celebrate incremental victories. We have to constantly scold ourselves for not having gotten it right to begin with. And it was one of the ultimate, like, spitting on the back of a giant's that I've seen on Zelf on the Shelf so far, because that scripture is beautiful. Like that scripture is great. Because if you really, you have the choice to live in two different societies at that time. You can live in the society that looks on an adulterous woman and stones her to death. But then you got this revolutionary guy who comes in and says, look, you guys are fucked up too. So she's fucked up, you're fucked up. Maybe don't murder her for being fucked up. And, like, that seems like a pretty big deal. And it might not be a big deal now, right? It might not be a big deal to us to not murder a woman who has cheated on her husband, because we don't do that. But, like, we should be pretty praiseworthy. Like, we should praise that happened at one point in time, because it's like they think that the ideal should be now always.
Yeah, there's never like a context for stuff had to evolve into something that you know, as Peter
Eric Weinstein
puts miracles. You know?
Eric Weinstein puts it really well when he talks about, you know, he's an atheist, but he talks about Judaism and the lessons that he's learned from it, and he'll talk about how atheists will try to throw in his face things from the Torah where they say that, like, oh yeah, there's this rule in Deuteronomy or whatever where it said that a disobedient child will have to be put before a judge in order to be stoned to death. for his disobedience. And he says, that sounds barbaric to us, but previous to that, it was the parent making the decision. So that's like a progressive decision to say, hey, hang on, like maybe talk to a judge before you kill your child for disobedience. And you have to look at it like that. You have to look at it from what it was and to what it moved into. Don't be angry at it. Bill Maher has that great quote where he says, they chastise us for not being yesterday who we would one day become. And that the same is true of society. You have to praise society where it's at and encourage it to get better in the ways that you think that it should, rather than scolding it for not having been better all along.
Yeah.
But there's also so many things like, I mean, God, it's been so long, but Karen Strawn did a bunch of great videos where she talked about, because, you know, like the feminists and everybody always like to talk about, like, in the past, women couldn't own property. It's like, first off, a lot of times they could actually, you know, but like, and women couldn't this and women couldn't that. Like, yeah. Also, women couldn't go to prison for their debts. And in fact, if women ran up debts that their husband couldn't pay, their husband went to prison for the women's debts.
Yeah,
and
they
there
specifically
are
brought up credit
10,000
cards in
examples
this.
of this.
Yeah, they specifically brought up credit cards in this. Yeah, that women couldn't have them.
Yeah.
So you're
But
giving
that's the thing,
account.
like, you know, that's the thing to talk about. Like, oh, women didn't have all these types of authority. Yeah, but they also didn't have the responsibility.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess what I'm saying is my
They were
ideal society
deliberately
is
societally absolved from all of the dangerous things that men were obliged to.
sure. I what I'm saying is though that my ideals of society is the liberal society that we, you know, mostly live in today, where men and women are treated the same way, legally speaking, and I'm happy with every step that it took to get to that point. It took somebody saying, no, don't kill a woman for infidelity. Like, she fucked up, but don't kill her. And it took somebody saying, no, they need to own property too. And to get angry at us for not having already figured that out is just gonna kill liberalism.
Now it just needs to go the other way, that it treats women with kids' gloves and
we don't have
especially
equality
in like family court. It's
women have all kinds of rights that men don't have. Even today, right now. Like, women can opt out of parenthood all the way up until after they've had a baby.
They can vote without being draftable. Or did that change? That's not officially.
Women have the right to vote. Men do not. Men get the privilege to vote in exchange for the selective service bullshit. You know?
But then family courts, as even mentioned on Mormon Stories, when that guy, the wrestling guy, went on and he said it right out. Like, Utah family courts are ridiculous, and it's just the truth.
I mean, it's everywhere. There's nowhere in the West that family courts aren't overwhelmingly anti-male. There's nowhere in the West that that's not the case. Utah, I think, is pretty bad. Is like probably especially bad. You know, and that's the other thing that's so hilarious is that, like, you know, the feminists will not jump in and attack the evil sexist idea of the tender years doctrine, that evil sexist idea that women make better parents for young children than men, you know, like, because that's like, I happen to agree that, like, actually they do, like, you know, like, if you could choose, I think, like, you know, small children are, if they only can be with one parent, you know, mothers are probably better than fathers for young children. They probably have a point there, but also that runs entirely against feminist dogma. So there you go.
Let's see, baby killing #girl power.
I like that it's the picture of her holding that baby. It's like, like, this is just moments before she just wrings out the baby's neck.
Baby right there.
I remember when he was
Yay,
he kicked
killer.
a bunch. He kicked a bunch when he was in her belly, and I remember, like, she got so mad at me because I'm sitting there. He's like a week away from being born, and she's like he's kicking at me, and I'm feeling her belly, and she thinks it's all cute. And I'm like, oh, little buddy, you're about a week away from getting human rights. You better play your cards right until then.
Charles Weiner says, I work in education. I've never had a male boss. I believe that. I believe that. And not like you could even get up in that world anymore. I'm sure it's just as difficult to rise there as it is anywhere else. But let's see. When Chris told his dad he masturbates, it wasn't as a deacon to the bishop. It was just son to dad. Hey, Dad, I masturbate. You want to know the honest truth? I'm going to give everybody TMI, but it's actually less MI than you want to know. I was a very late bloomer on that stuff. I actually hadn't masturbated all the way up through. I didn't do it when I was a young teen, man.
Shit, man, I was like 10 or something, like 11. I was very.
I had experience with girls before I ever did to myself, and I don't even know how that happened. Like it wasn't. I got in my head that even touching down there at all was so I didn't even like get close to it. And,
sure, so did I, but I just assumed when I was very young that I'm just a lost cause and I'm bad. And
there's a Squidbillies episode about the rapture, and they're all naked and slowly drifting up to heaven. And like for some, I can't remember exactly why, but they don't want to go to heaven, and they're like, "Touch yourself," and Rusty just reaches down there and just drops like a rock.
There was one of the last good Seth Rogen movies was that This Is the End.
Yeah, that was
and
good.
There's a part where it's the rapture happens, and James. Somebody, it was Daryl does something to sacrifice himself, and then he gets raptured, and so they're all like selfishly trying to be selfless, like they're trying to sacrifice themselves for each other, and James Franco ends up doing it, and he's getting raptured, and he's like floating up, and it's Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel that are left down there, like, oh man, he's getting raptured, he's leaving us, and he's just like, yeah, fuck you guys, pussies, fuck off, and then he just gets dropped, and he gets eaten by cannibal Danny McBride.
Hawkish Owl 2020. Women are better for young children generally, but single dads are better than single moms statistically. I think that's true. Like when it comes to abuse, and it's partially because, well, I mean, they can blame men for it, but single moms are more likely to invite in an abuser than that is true. Some of the other stuff that I had in that one, let me read some of the highlights of the stuff I said, because we're not going to find the specific things, but they said something about it's these religious people who are most ignorant about nature. and then he talks about it's observed in nature. It's totally observable in nature that sex just isn't a thing, that the sex binary isn't a real thing at all. And that's not true. That's 100% not true. If you talk to real evolutionary biologists, they'll say that's one of the most observed things in nature, that there's a hard binary in mammals when it comes to sex and birthing.
Flip had some good stories because one of the things I pointed out was that Tanner mentions that we have an increase in mental illness right now, and he posits that is due to the fact that people are being told to have kids before they're ready monetarily. And so these kids are born into financially stressful situations, and that's why they're mentally ill. So if you encourage kids to have kids, or people to have kids too young, that will increase mental illness.
Yeah. Well, Flip's got his stories with that, but Durkheim is one of, like I've mentioned a million times, one of the first things he ever noticed, that affluence, mental illness, and suicide goes up with affluence.
Yeah,
it's one of the things that people have problems with. It's also, the navel gazing, but I'll let Flip tell his.
I spaced out there because I was responding to a Facebook thing for.
So we were talking about how
claim that parents not having enough money is the reason so many kids.
Oh yeah, no, it's like I worked briefly, not for a long time, but I worked at a residential treatment center for screwed up rich teenagers, and that cost $10,000 a month. And these were some of the most screwed up human beings you could ever hope to meet. Like one of the stories was like, I didn't see this. Another guy who worked there told me about it because we were actually talking about this very thing where it's like, like the money seems to be part of one of these kids' issues, but in their rooms they had these cork boards where they, it was where they could put their personal stuff, and he was asking this girl, like, there was a picture of her. There's a photograph of her, with the headphones on in a helicopter looking at the skyline of Manhattan. And he goes like, "Oh, did you get to go on one of those New York helicopter tours?" And she's like, "No, that's Daddy's helicopters. He takes it to work. Sometimes he takes me to school in it." But like, yeah, like what a stupid thing to say. Like, no, that's not it. Also, I mean, this is slightly an aside, but it's kind of tied into all this. But like, just in the last few months, I've gone through a whole giant ordeal with an old friend. I've known this guy for 15 years. He's a friend, and he was my neighbor for 6 years. And he's schizophrenic. And he went nuts this year, like he's never gone nuts before. And right now, like, he's bouncing around hotels, but he's on his way to homelessness. And nobody can say that nobody tried to help him. Like, his friends have tried to help him. His family has tried to help him. He's been in hospitals. He's been in all kinds of hospitals. Like, everybody has done everything they possibly can to help this guy. And like, I mean, that's things like he's on disability. He was in subsidized housing, and he set his fucking house on fire because he's crazy. And it's not because nobody tried to help him. No, everybody tried to help him. We brought every damn resource we possibly could to bear. And he crazied his way out of all of it, Like, it's such a stupid, simplistic attitude of like, oh, well, the problem is there's not enough resources. Like one of my big pet peeves is that, like, oh, there's not enough help for homeless people. Oh, bullshit.
Yeah.
There's plenty of food. In fact, I just had this fight with somebody like on that stupid atheist page. I had this fight a couple days ago where it's like, oh, if only Christians cared about feeding people. You stupid asshole. The vast majority of food aid is done by churches.
That's like, something that even
Chris remembers. I know Chris remembers this, that when we worked in the catering, when we had big events and we always had leftover food, and every day the Catholics came in a big truck to pick it up, to distribute to people who needed it, for hell's sake. Like, they did it. They took care of it, and they did it for free. Like, we provided the food that was going to go in the garbage.
But they were only
doing all kinds of laws, we couldn't give it away, but they could.
But they were only doing that for a hope of eternal reward or fear of eternal damnation. So it doesn't count.
Oh, yeah. I forget.
When I'm a good person, it's just because I'm a good person.
For Catholics.
It's literally empathy. Try it.
So yeah, like I mean, that's the thing. I remember a couple of years ago that there was the Antifa communists were it was during the winter. It was a particularly cold winter, and the Antifa communists were protesting outside of the city and county building, demanding more help for homeless people. And they're saying, "Oh, homeless people need a place." And like, I'm acquainted. Like, I was friends with him before he got elected, but I'm acquainted with a city councilman. And I saw on his Facebook page, it was kind of funny watching him try to walk this line, because all the people are like, you're a progressive. Why aren't you doing something about this? And I remember he posted on Facebook, like, I just got off the phone with the homeless shelter. They have 50 empty beds right now.
Yep.
The beds are there. So all of these people saying we got no place to go, it's like, no, what you don't have is a place to go where you can do drugs.
Yeah,
because the rule at the shelter is you can't do drugs there.
And in fact, we have that right now, even in Idaho Falls. Somehow, the coldest place on the fucking planet, we've got that. And our mayor's solution to it was to say, well, you just can't go into the parks after dark now. And we're like, yeah, but they're still there. They're doing drugs there. I can't go there and hang out, but they can go there and do drugs.
Many years ago, I was a security guard at this big engineering company in Midvale, and the property, the campus of the engineering company, it was like 3 buildings, this whole big campus, and their property abutted the Jordan River and the Jordan River Trail down there. And one day, one of the employees came to me and said, like, I think there's people camping in the rivers, so I called the police, and I had to go out there and observe for my report. And it was this young couple with a 2-year-old, like a baby, I'm like, I had to fight back the tears watching it. And the cop was like, so why didn't you go over to the, why are you sleeping out here? Why didn't you go over to the shelter? And the guy's like, oh, and the cop goes like, drugs? And the guy's like, well, yeah, drugs. Like, he copped to it right there, just saying, like, we want to do our drugs, and so we would rather camp on the Jordan River Trail with our little baby so that we can shoot up, because they won't let us shoot up at the homeless shelter. All right, so that's not because the resources aren't available to those people, because there's also drug help for those people, but they have to want to stop.
I'll take your baby, man. I can't. That's like the worst example of the whole. Rod Meldrum giving his example of this throwing the starfish back. That's my nightmare, is thinking about the amount of like 2-year-olds that are in circumstances like that.
So Charles Wagner is bringing up some points here that this purchasing power and stuff and inflation is eroding the chance to have kids. And I saw some people talking this week, because once again, if I stem back to that Benjamin Boyce episode, that everything's eugenics and the false scarcity that's being created purposefully, I think that's really happening. The net zero idea, all that sort of stuff. These ideas that are getting pushed down in the population, like we'll play Sam for a bit. Like, Sam, you don't have ideas. Ideas have you, Sam. If we can use you, or if we can use the type of predeterminism, she's predetermined to have those ideas. But guess what? That's all being funneled down. There's a top-down thing funneling down, trying to have everybody not have babies to. And it's not just that, they're doing weird little tricks to your food. That's real. They're doing everything in this world is 1,000 little paper cuts to try to cut into population control. And I saw some people talking about, like, the West and different ideas of like getting all nutty, but there's some other countries like Japan and Iran that they didn't get all woke, and they're still having birthing problems. And some of that has to do 100% with material conditions, that it's just hard to purchase, hard to buy, and that stuff drives stuff down. And what's the thing that always survives? It always goes back to the idiocracy thing, the thing that I admitted to, and you throw the bones, and you always have to throw the bones to the Midnight Mormons and other people. Is like the only thing that powers through continuing to have babies through all these conditions is some mythology, we could call it, or a religious belief that this must be done no matter what. Hell, rain, wind, fire. Down H. Oak says so. We got to go pop out these babies because we're mandated to do it. And it's the only thing that's going to keep having babies right now. And it's why the future is Mormon and Muslim, and it's not Tanner and Sam and me, because I don't have kids. You guys all have kids, but
do you remember, Chris, watching that Kurosawa movie High and Low that's set in the 60s? That's all about post-war Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, crazy stuff.
Yeah,
everybody should watch High and Low by Kurosawa, by the way. That's probably in my top 3 all-time Kurosawa movies.
Watch it, and then watch some stuff about all the ideas and tricks that he puts into it. That's just so intensely forward-thinking with art and visuals that nobody even thinks about nowadays.
What makes High and Low kind of fun is because Kurosawa only made 2 or 3 contemporary movies that that were set in the time that he shot them, and High and Low is one of them. And it is absolutely about class and society and Japan coming out of the post-war thing, going into the huge economic Japanese boom of the 70s and 80s, and it's intensely fascinating. And you can see a lot of why the Japanese birth rate dropped if you watch that movie. It kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But anyway, if I'm going to say the only way we can fight that back and make that not true, and make it not true that the future is not just Mormons and Muslims and not Sam and Tanner and me, is we got to go have babies, y'all. You can beat it. We can beat it by just shutting up and having babies or something like that, having kids, committing, having families, having strong relationships, and all that sorts of stuff. That stuff will help the future. But, we probably won't do it. We'll probably idiocracy ourselves out. Yeah. But I used to make a joke, thinking a sociopathically, like a Harari type guy. I should say, if I was a proper scientist, the way I should choose a wife is I should go have babies with 5 different women and choose the one that gave me the best offspring. That would be empirically true. That would be empirical, scientific.
like Hakushal said this thing, commenting earlier. It says women are better for young children generally, but single dads are better than single moms statistically. And like, that's one of the great ironies within feminism is that like if you want to maximize the chances that a boy grows up to be a wife-beating, deadbeat rapist, raise him as a single mom in welfare.
Yeah.
Like
it's also where they get most molestations
trick.
happen in those scenarios. That's where most of them. We're also worried about bad things happening to little kids. Well, that's one of the areas where it happens.
Yeah.
This is one of the points of all of it too, and this is one of the points of social emotional learning, which is one of the things I was trying to bring up with the whole theosophy thing and the social emotional learning, and that's actually what's leading to transing most of the kids. Is all you got to do is make people self-conscious and navel gaze. Like navel gazing is the answer to killing off birth rates and all that sort of stuff. But this lady says here, it's fundamentally healthier to be relationship focused, interested in others, than self-focused, over preoccupied with yourself. Sexual orientation, I forget what the rest of that. And Peterson points out that in brain scans, self-consciousness is technically indistinguishable from pain and anxiety. And but yeah, the social emotional learning thing, one of the ways you trans the kids is you stop and make them think every day. Like you stop and reflect, do you still feel like a boy and a girl? Are you happy with your gender identity? Let's think about this every single day before math. Before math, let's stop and think about all the oppressed people. Oh, before math, let's stop and think about and that's one of the things that comes up again and again. If you hear people who have kids actually going through these social emotional learning things and how they start putting these self-conscious things into every single subject somewhere, then these were the ideas of the theosophists. And that's kind of one of the angles I was going to poke at both both Leyland and Kwaku and saying these theosophists and stuff. I know you guys don't like the UN. I know you guys don't like the trans stuff. This all comes from the theosophists. But so did the Wizard of Oz. That's something I found out. The guy who wrote the Wizard of Oz was a full-on Blavatsky theosophist.
I share a birthday with Frank Baum.
Really?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, meme review, and then let's call it good. Here's the thing that I just did a basic search real quick. Differences in brains of females and males. Females have greater volume in the prefrontal cortex, orbital frontal cortex, superior temporal cortex, lateral parietal. He mentioned like 5 times like stuff can just be observed in nature. And all the stuff I'm saying is just true because we've observed in nature because science. And the thing that drives you so nuts. Oh man, there was a good clip from. We've pulled it up before, but Carl Sagan warned so hard about this. Like Carl Sagan specifically warned about this type of scientism where people will be cocking their head back and saying science to something that's not science is political. And gender queer theory from its inception said it was political and not science. It says it itself in Judith Butler. The receipts are all there, man. Ooh, what am I doing? Wrong direction. So look at this. Look at all the we got the pride flag stuff. And oh, wait a minute. I actually do believe you can change your gender nowadays. Did you know that? Check this out. Proof positive. John Bon Jovi be looking like 5th Golden Girl, and now I can't unsee it. I believe now. Like I believe, like
I gotta find that.
Tanner's right, man.
One of my coworkers was talking about how much she likes Bon Jovi. She's an older lady from the South, and she's like, "Oh, Bon Jovi still looks good." Now I got to show her that. She's gonna love that.
Tanner's just right, man. I like this. Just heard a conspiracy theory that the Loch Ness Monster is actually the ghost of an ancient dinosaur, and since it affects nothing and nobody, I've decided I believe it as a treat for myself. Wait a minute, this isn't democracy, this is anal sex.
Oh, Jesus.
That's classic.
So here's all the people who don't believe in hell, but they all believe in it now. There were so many of these today. There's just like a million different posts like this. Normalizing atheism. Way to go, fellers. Saluting the Air Force, saluting the pride flag. Do you think they ever salute it? Like, I actually think that's like technically a thing. Like, they're not supposed to salute other flags ever. And just all thrown out the window.
Sure. they scoffed for years at saluting flag. I mean, I was one of those guys that sort of scoffed at the idea of saluting a flag or Pledge of Allegiance or whatever. And now the people who were scoffing with me, or I thought so, are like, "Oh no, you guys weren't scoffing. You just thought we should salute to and pledge allegiance to a different flag."
Man, Vae Victus, Vae Victus. Woe to the vanquished. This is just a random thing, but I thought this was funny. Never ask a woman her age, a man his salary, and an indie musician why their parents' names are blue on Wikipedia. Brene Brown is the new person on. Wow, super Brene Brownism. This is funny. The New York Times, 1 year ago, how the Russian media spread false claims about Ukrainian Nazis. Yesterday, Nazi symbols on Ukraine front lines highlight thorny issues of history.
So that's one of those things where, like, on day one of the war, I saw something about that. So I just went immediately to Wikipedia and put on the Azov Battalion. First words are like, Azov Battalion is a neo-Nazi paramilitary group. Okay, god damn it. Like, it was right, like, literally within moments of them saying, like, oh, no, that's just the propagandistic light. Like, no, that's the thing.
Do you want me to share those photos, Jared, real quick?
Yeah, those my mother-in-law sent these to me. They're just in Utah. This is somebody's front lawn for Pride. For Pride.
What? What's
Pride
going
tomatoes.
on there?
Rhonda Sanchez.
Yeah.
Boy, wow, that's
Oh my
yeah. Like, we're not making it about sex. No.
I know,
It's just
like-
about
Did you see that one? There was one where I guess I should pull up the other thing. Matt Walsh.
Rhonda Sanchez.
I don't
Oh,
like. I guess
God.
it's supposed to be insulting. It's kind of like the people who call me gay, thinking that I'm going to be insulted by it. I guess they're calling Ron DeSantis Mexican, thinking that he'll be insulted by it. I don't know.
Yeah, this was another one. Matt Walsh. They did an undercover thing where they went and got this person to give permission to somebody. Like, they wrote a letter. They got a letter just from like an online call so that the insurance would cover it, and it just took like 22 seconds to get an online letter to get any sort of underage hormones or even surgery. Yeah,
surgeon. And Plume rubber stamped Greg's letter in 22 minutes. And not all that time was spent discussing the surgery, by the way. Some of the conversation was about traffic and the weather. As I speak, we've uploaded footage of the call on Twitter. You can watch it there right now. In a moment, we'll show you parts of it. In this video call, Greg assumed the name Chelsea Bussey. He didn't dress up as a woman. He didn't wear any women's clothing. He didn't go to Party City and dye his hair blue. He just told them he identified as a woman and that he was taking hormones prescribed by his father. Greg couldn't even pronounce the name of the surgery he wanted. He called it an orchidectomy. He claimed that the reason he wanted the surgery is that it would speed up his non-existent transition, which the Plume nurse said didn't make any sense from a medical perspective, but none of that raised any red flags for Plume. The nurse told Greg she wanted to write him the strongest letter she could anyway. Watch.
So you're currently on estrogen. You're taking 6 milligrams a day.
Twice a day. Yeah, right, you got it.
So you're taking 1.5 tablets a day. And then take a history. All right. Okay, so let's kind of get into this a little bit. So you are seeking what surgery? Things that are of course you probably know, things that are irreversible when it comes to estrogen-based therapy, is breast development and testicular shrinkage, right? But there's always a possibility for hair growth to come back. That may change with orchiectomy. Once you stop, once you no longer have your testes, you no longer have the ability for your teeth to convert to BHT because you don't have as much teeth, right? So hair growth, facial and body hair may change after orchiectomy. Fat redistribution is affected by the estrogen. So you may have less of a change of fat redistribution if you ever stop E, but it may change a whole. So it's kind of
Think about the daily pills.
Now, a couple of days after that discussion, as we documented on Twitter, Plume sent Greg a letter diagnosing him with significant and ongoing gender dysphoria. Therefore, Plume was an appropriate candidate for Plume testicle removal. Greg makes significant progress in alleviating his dysphoria. Now, even after Greg followed up with text messages to Plume explaining that he doesn't have dysphoria, they didn't retract or amend that letter in any way. There's no excuse for that, obviously. Plume had multiple opportunities to tell the truth in their letter, and they chose not to. In his intake form, Greg indicated he didn't have dysphoria for 6 months or more. Didn't have it. That means under the current version of the DSM, he never should have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria in the first place. But Plume never once asked Greg about this in his video interview. Instead, they just said that he had dysphoria in the letter, which they intended to be used by a surgeon who would then carve up Greg's testicles. Why didn't Plume amend the letter once they were made aware that Greg didn't have dysphoria? As Plume's nurse explained, in order for the surgery to be paid for, quote unquote, the diagnosis would need to remain. In other words, insurance companies won't pay for the operation unless the letter contains a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So they're going to put that diagnosis in there regardless.
Classic insurance fraud.
Part of the other thing that Tanner said in that video is he unironically talked about the slippery slope fallacy, and that's a fallacy. And he said the slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy. You know, these guys believe that just because you give one thing.
Yeah, because nothing's ever dropped off the edge in history. It's never once happened.
God.
San Francisco Police Department did a pseudo-religious ceremony raising the pride flag. Elon's response was priceless.
Got a
What did
linky
Elon
link
say?
for us? Bang a link in there for us.
I don't know what Elon said to that one, but man, this stuff's just endless.
Yeah, it never fucking stops. God.
I don't know that we got much more. Jared, I won't show that, but Jared said he supported the current thing on something. Now he's getting excoriated for it.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, that was one of the funniest things. I should have painted over the names so you could show it, but yeah, this dude in an ex-Mormon group, he keeps, so first he started by, he showed all those pictures of himself, and like some of them were like partial nudes, like he's pulling down his pants. He's trying to act sexy, which as a dude,
Oh man, those are
as a dude without abs is impossible.
Mm.
And he's been getting, I don't know, like almost unhinged on there. And like last time he showed everybody his new bumper sticker that says, "I'm not anti-Mormon, I'm against all religion." I thought that was pretty clever. Then he showed us this time that he added like an ally bumper sticker. There's kids on this bitch sticker. There's like several stickers, and almost all of them are gay themed. And he's like, yeah, and I parked in front of a Deseret book. I bet they were uncomfortable with that. And I just responded to it by saying samesies, and then a picture of the "I support the current thing" little logo. And he's like, I don't want to misrepresent you, but are you saying that, are you mocking my allyship for, and I don't know what I probably just won't respond, but my response to that is yes, I am. Like, this is clearly just showmanship at this point.
Look at this. The CIA is pro-pride. They made the announcement on Twitter.
We know.
Thanks, CIA.
They probably created it.
We all have these ideas. The ideas have us, not us having the ideas, thanks to the CIA. We've all been psyoped into this, folks. One great big psyop. And none of this is to say that a gay person shouldn't have a great old life. A gay against groomer ain't a great person, not a hate group. Christoph, those people, almost every single person Bogosian had on that episode I'm recommending. Andy No is gay. Billboard Chris is gay. Josh Slocum, gay.
I didn't even know Andy No was gay.
Yeah, Andy No's gay. Gay minority, that's the Nazi that they've all been worried about.
He's gay and Asian. That makes it even more hilarious.
Anyway, maybe we should wrap up quick.
Post that John Bon Jovi Golden Girls thing in the group so I can forward that.
Okay, I'll send it in a bit.
I'm trying to find it, but I can't find the right one. All right, did we do it again?
I think we done did it, and we pretty quick this time instead of 5 hours.
That's good.
Oh wait, here's Kwaku.
We'll go for
Cardin's on. Cardin's clicked in. No, I'm just kidding. Wait a minute. My mom's gay. You guys, you want to hear some family info?
Did your mom come out as gay?
Stuff. No. My grandma, my grandma and grandpa divorced before I even remember, and for years, my grandma had a live-in housemaid named Monsi and we always talked about Motzi and all this sorts of stuff. And all these years later, after my grandma died, I found out that when Motzi would come stay in town, they would sleep in the same bed together. And my very, very Mormon, Provo Mormon, like BYU professor cousins wouldn't let them sleep in the same bed together because they thought some weird stuff was going on. And all these years later, after my grandma's death, and I'd heard about Motzi forever, I literally thought she was just like her living housemate and all sorts of stuff. And all these years after she died and everything, I was like, I said it straight to my family because they were still talking about, yeah, it was weird. They were sleeping in the same bed and why our cousins didn't let them do it. And they got all upset and it was all this big old thing. And I just stopped and said, you guys, was grandma lesbian? And I was kind of stopping like, they're just kind of like looking around each other, and I'm pretty sure my grandma got into the lesbianism, and nobody just wanted to admit it, and it was pretty open, and nobody just wanted to say the words.
Well, there's like when I was a missionary in one of my areas, one of the counselors in the bishopric, he lived in a house with his wife and his 3 kids, and this other lady and her kid, and it was all just kind of like, oh. You know, and then like, you know, a year later after I'd left the area, I heard like, yeah, he got excommunicated for polygamy. I'm like, oh, I guess that fits. Like, like everybody in the ward was like, oh yeah, I guess so.
Oh, he wasn't just helping out a single mom in need, but sharing a bed with him and his wife.
What about East Oregon things wanting to become Idaho? That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I mean, they're welcome, but it's not going to happen.
See, everyone, what does that say? Everyone talked about my uncle's roommate growing up. Oh, man, that's so funny. But, all right.
We do it?
Fun stuff, guys. Fun.
Do you think anything stupid will happen before now and next Thursday?
What?
Do you think anything stupid will happen between now and next Thursday?
I think the Drag Floyd will happen this week.
Oh, geez. That reminds me, like, are we ever going to release our episodes that didn't release because of the terrible timing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I should just release those.
Yeah. Although that's the thing is, like, you know, like not Godwin's Law, Murphy's Law. If you put that out, we'll have another terrible incident within 5 minutes of it posting.
Yeah, no doubt. So, yeah. We
be careful because then people are going to think you're a bigot.
No, like, putting out that episode will make Drag Floyd happen.
What was it called? Believer. We reviewed Believer.
Yeah, we reviewed Believer live. It was when we all got together.
After we reviewed it, like the next day that a nightclub shooting happened.
It's like, probably shouldn't put that out.
But I can put them out now. Yeah, I still have it. I have one banked with Christopher from Before the Crow's Nest too that I haven't put out. But I got to put both those up. I'll just stick them up, not even edit anything down. But the problem with that one is we tried to do it. Mystery Science Theater 2000 stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's just tough to line up, partially because like we had little moments where nobody was watching the stuff side by side, and there's stuff where something would freeze and the other would freeze, and so the sync would be a little off if you're trying to watch it in line with the thing. But I mean, you can get the gist and the idea of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
and you can just put yourself through the nightmare of watching Believer. I mean, it's entertaining because it's so stupid, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, you told me about it, and I'm like, it can't be that interesting. But like I started watching it, and like it is so like his total lack of self-awareness, like is like it. Honestly, like Believer
feels like a Simpsons episode.
Well, watching Believer, it reminded me. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Glenn or Glenda, the Ed Wood movie that he made about transvestites. That was thinly veiled documentary about himself, and like because part of what makes Glenn or Glenda so fascinating is like. You see the whole psychology of the filmmaker coming out, but the filmmaker thinks that he's hiding it. And it's just like, dude, we catch your game here. And Believer reminded me of watching Glenn or Glenda for that aspect of it, where it's like, you think you're telling this, you know, great story, but we all see that this is actually just you narcissistically talking about yourself.
Yeah,
Believer was like 50% the Mormon Church is at fault for all these gay suicides. 10% Dan Reynolds telling his own stupid story, and then like 40% Dan Reynolds not wearing a shirt.
Yeah,
until the final moment when Dan Reynolds has his garden in Gethsemane and
he's like,
he finally finishes saving the gays. The work is done.
After our bigoted episode, let me see if I can get back in the good graces of the gays.
Hey, gays. Gays, I love you. Gays, you're cool. Gays, I wish things weren't so hard for you.
I'm so sorry.
Gays, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Grandma, we should have known, Grandma.
It made me think of that pop star with Andy Samberg, where he sings that song about how gay marriage should be legal.
Yeah.
And then they're interviewing celebrities about it, and Ringo Starr's interviewing. He's like, he's saying about if it's not already legal, it's already legal. Nobody's trying to stop it.
But in all seriousness, yeah, we're down with you gays if you leave kids alone. So, simple as that. And most of you do, and most of you, like the Gays Against Groomers, who are not a hate group, Jim Bennett, are 1,000,000% on our side. And Billboard Chris is 1,000,000 times more brave than I am, and Andy No is 1,000,000 times more brave than I am. So, anyway. And Josh Slocum is 1,000,000 times more salty than I am.
Yeah, that's true. Alrighty.
All right.
Next
Have
time.
a good one, y'all.
See y'all later now.
Hey.